Your next author claims to have driven the entire 164,000 miles of highway across the good old US of A, usually sharing his stories as mere anecdotes at various truck stops and way stations. Porkchop was encouraged to put those tall tales on paper. His only published book, Episodes of the Road, Memoirs of an American Trucker, is chock full of interesting locales, unbelievable triumphs of good over evil. And here to share a few episodes of The Road, ladies and gentlemen, Porkchop.
Now, the first story I chose to read from my memoirs is kind of a confession. See, when you're a knight of the road, sometimes you got to make a choice between human life and wildlife. No matter which decision you make, you're going to regret it. Mile 130,012. I was driving down through Amarillo, Texas. Now, you may not know this. Hell, you wouldn't believe me if I told you. Well, I'll tell you. Amarillo, Texas, not only is it the headquarters of the National Crossword Puzzle Society, but it used to be called Armadillo, Texas. But the structure of that word doesn't fit so easily into a crossword puzzle. So they changed the name to Amarillo with its convenient vowel, consonant, vowel, consonant, vowel, consonant structure. I knew you ain't going to believe me that well. It's fine. Now, why was it originally called Armadillo? Well, I'll tell you. Because I read all about it in my Time Life books. I had a limited edition series called Critters of the Southwest. See, every 700 years, the great Texarkana armadillo migration occurs. Millions of them shelled jackrabbits come crawling out of their hidey holes, as if they were demonic creatures being summoned to the mortal realm, turning the Interstate 40 into a horrifying hellscape that can only be imagined by the most disturbed of individuals or motorcyclists. I was heading down Interstate 40 with about 2,000 gallons of medicine in my trailer when I noticed my bobblehead Ronald Reagan was more bobbly than usual. Just as my Mr. Pibb began to splash around in my cup. The earth was shaking as millions of Mother Nature's speed bumps came migrating across Interstate 40. All the other drivers and steering wheel holders and organ donors alike, they stopped dead in their tracks to wait for this miraculous event, which only occurs septicentennially. But not me, because I got medicine. I got to get to the hospital, and I ain't your average gear jammer. So I pushed on through. I put the hammer down. Mile after mile of crunching, squishing, and splattering. I figured if they were dumb enough to get in the way of an 18-wheeler, then they deserve what's coming to them. Took all the skill I could muster, along with a prayer and a refill of my Mr. Pibb with my left hand to keep that trailer from fishtailing as I traveled across those little gray bumps. Then I found myself right in the middle of it, but the bumps seemed to die down a bit. The wheel wells were filled with gooey remains of thousands of busted armadillo shells. My truck didn't stop. Oh no, I was in triple digits. See, I had put the hammer down a while back, and it was like driving on wet ice. My rig, like the belly of an obese child, flew down the slip and slide that was Interstate 40. Then I saw them all them other drivers on the west end of the armadillo-covered highway, stuck in their own traffic jam. I was headed right into the rear end of them. I did the only thing I could think of, a maneuver that every driver dreads and tries to avoid at all costs. But I ain't your average gear jammer. I threw my rig into a jackknife on purpose. Tires squelching as armadillo shells gradually squealed to the sound of rubber on road, smoking tires and well-done armadillo steaks up in my brakes. The truck came to a gradual stop and just a few feet from the vehicles in front of me, covering them in the armadillo apocalypse like a skier what comes to a stop and sprays snow everywhere, but it wasn't snow. Yeah, they weren't happy about that at all, especially that couple in the convertible. Yeah, they was all angry. Angry as a rattler in a room full of rocking chairs, know what I mean? But they didn't know that I saved some lives that day, and that 2,000 gallons of medicine got to the hospital right on time. You ain't going, fine, I'll tell you another one. You ain't gonna believe me, I'll tell you anyway. I was hauling a load of IKEA furniture up to Alaska one early spring. Them drivers all taking Alaska Highway 97 through British Columbia, but I knew a shortcut to Alaska on the outskirts of the city of Fireside. Now, I ain't about to tell you steering wheel holders about it because it's a trucker secret and the knights of the road have a code. The reason no one ever took this shortcut was due to the giant albino moose that roams around those parts. They just call him truck catcher, because no moose catcher on no rig was a match for him. And he would use them giant white antlers of his to run cars and trailers right off the road and into the wilderness where he might feed on their remains. And it being spring and mating season and all, that moose was particularly irritable. I thought about how badly them folks in Fairbanks wanted their IKEA. And I said to myself, Porkchop, what the hell? You ain't the average gear jammer. I put that rig into gear and coasted on through the beauty of Canada in the spring. About halfway through the shortcut, I saw him. It seemed as he could hear the ringing tones of Tennessee Ford from miles away. A puff of white steam shot from the dreaded monstrosity's snot-dripping nostrils, and he slowly lowered his gigantic head, fully loaded with antlers, with the intention of wrecking my rig. Old truck catcher was used to being the spookiest thing on the road, but he ain't never run into me before. I kept it cooking, and I stared him down, and he looked at me in his eyes. They flashed like uranium glass in the glow of a bug zapper. Then he begun a charging. Now, I got a maneuver for almost every situation, but I wasn't ready for this. No, but time just kind of slowed down, you know what I mean? Got real. And I thought to myself, I cut off my eyeballs and I assumed a position to time my maneuver just right. Just before our chicken match came to what could have been a horrific end of blood, busted glass, and twisted antlers, I flipped on my blinders and let that horn go, nearly blew my doors off. And that primitive brain and that enormous alabaster bowl kicked on, and old truck catcher flinched just enough for me to knock him for a loop and keep on trucking. My rig still has the scars to prove it. It wasn't a hit and run. It was a moose. I don't care what they say. Mile 337,214. This one's entitled Friend of the Road. Maybe you're wondering why I'm always popping pills in this book and drinking Mr. Pibb. Well, you ain't gonna believe me anyway if I told you. I'll tell you. It's been 14 hours since my last stop at the old Resteria, and my trucker bombs was full of filtered Mr. Pibb. Now, you steering wheel holders don't know a trucker bomb. You ever go down a interstate off-ramp and you see little bottles of fluid littered about? Wonder what that is? They had trucker bombs. See, we're on a strict schedule. We don't got time to stop and take a little restroom break. You know what I mean? I like the Gatorade bottles because they got a wide mouth. You know what I mean? I ain't your average gear jammer. Let's just put it that way. There I saw it. Egbert's Oasis. Not the nicest or classiest of truck stops, not since all them lot lizards turned it into a pickle park. I pulled in there to empty out and fill up. Got on the radio and let my buddy Buckhead know that I was putting on my nightgown. Buckhead's good people. Now, you may be thinking that I'm the kind of driver who goes looking for them sleeper creepers. Well, I ain't. And I go to the Flying J for a B&G, not a, BJ. You know what I'm saying? Well, there she goes, tapping on my door, Tattooed Tina. She wasn't covered in tattoos or nothing, but they call her that because she had one big old tattoo taking up her whole arm, which was so massive and flabby that the design of spider webs, zodiac signs, flaming skulls, and hearts looked like a billboard. Every truck driver knew what she was selling. She knew my rig by its customized mud flaps and pork chop plate. Tattooed Tina also knew that I wasn't looking for a commercial company. And that made me think that she might have been in a bad kind of way. I let her in my cab reluctantly, and she looked like she hadn't slept in days. "What is it?" I asked. She kept looking over her shoulder and said to me that something was trying to get her. She told me her story, and I was filled with disgust. Not because of the details of her story, but because of her breath, which was caused by what I hoped to be sausage gravy dribblings on her blouse. Now, she described something that looked like a man with bat wings, a giant bat or a bird or moth or something. Now, I know what she's talking about because I just got done listening to the open line callers on Coast to Coast AM, and lots of drivers have been seeing the thing fitting that description all over the country, especially in New Jersey. She says, he waits till you try to sleep, then he takes you away. She trembled with fear. Now, I knew Tattoo Tina. She was the toughest mom around these parts, and if she was scared, then I knew I should be too. But I told her, stop breathing on me. Just go on inside and get one of them bottomless cups of Mr. Pibb that Egbert's Oasis is always bragging about. Hop on the nearest Greytown bus to town, and I went to bed. My dream of driving a tornado with a steering wheel like Pecos Bill was interrupted by tapping at my door, and I said, "Damn it, Tina." I looked out there, and there was nothing. Then I heard the swooping sound on the driver's side. You ain't gonna believe me. I might as well just stop this right now. You're gonna buy this book? I'll tell you anyway. Then I heard the swooping sound on the driver's side of the rig, followed by what sounded like a loose tarp in a windstorm. It was right above me, and I figured it was a turkey vulture and that Tina had one too many Jack Daniels chasers with her Benjadrine. But then I heard what can only be described as a two-legged figure walking atop my cabin trailer. Now, I always have an axe handle at the ready. You don't believe me? I do. So, some of you might. You don't believe me now? I'm about 4 steps from an axe handle at all times. I never saw that dang thing. I figured that creature was mad that I took away its tattooed prey, and now it wants revenge on old Porkchop. Well, it doesn't come around when I'm awake. And this was in November 2016. I haven't slept a wink since. How, you might ask? I ain't your average gear jammer.